We we are waiting for our colleagues. There's a lot of other committees going on over here over in the Pocahontas building, as well as this important one tonight. So we're going to start in about 15 minutes, and the first bills we're going to hear are going to be on online gaming. Okay, we're going to start. The ABC Gaming Subcommittee is now in session. We're going to call up Delegate Carol Foy, HB 923.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I have House Bill 923, Alcoholic Beverage Control, Possession and Consumption of Alcohol Beverages by Interdicted Persons. Mr. Chairman, before I begin, I would like to move an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you. Speaking to the substitute, Mr. Chairman. This substitute limits the application of the bill to habitual drunkards only. What a habitual drunkard is that when a court says that a person is a habitual drunkard, there is no definition for it. It's a civil process. The Commonwealth Attorney requests it. Then that person can never purchase or possess alcohol, ever. Not even their own home. They do not have to be present, and they're not entitled to an attorney. So the issue with this is that the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals have said that our habitual drunkard code in Virginia is unconstitutional, meaning illegal, that it's bad. It should go away. We should not have it. So that's what this bill does. It removes the habitual drunkard statute from our laws. The interdiction statute dates back to the 1800s, and it's only Virginia and Utah who have this type of antiquated law still on the books. It is definitely needed because as of August 2015, there were 4,743 convictions of interdicted persons. There is no definition of habitual drunkard. The Court of Appeals have said that it's arbitrary and vague, and it has a disparate impact on people who are homeless and who have issues of addiction. So that's what this bill does, and I am open to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? Okay. Do we have any members of the public that desire to speak in favor? Please state your name.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Elaine Poon. I'm with the Legal Aid Justice Center. I'm one of the attorneys who brought the lawsuit that challenged this statute. I just wanted to touch on how this statute works and further discuss how we discovered over almost 2,000 people were targeted simply because they were homeless and because they suffered from alcoholism. Actually, anyone can bring someone in and have them declared a habitual drunkard, but we found that this was used as a criminal statute, and it meant a revolving door of people who were incarcerated simply because of their addiction, simply because they were suffering from homelessness, and they were constantly incarcerated. We had one client who was incarcerated over 30 times. It's probably even higher at this point. One time he was walking down the aisle in a Walmart. Another time he was in a park restroom and he happened to be sleeping next to an empty beer can. So literally they were being incarcerated for who they were and what they were suffering from. So the court agreed with us that this violates the 8th and 14th Amendments, the cruel and unusual punishment statute, and this vagueness issue as well. And this bill is really necessary at this point simply to remove these unconstitutional discriminatory elements in the law. The prosecutors and law enforcement now are dealing with implementation. I was just looking at the order. It's 83 pages for law enforcement to have to deal with that instead of just removing it from the statute doesn't make sense. So I think this is the right approach. And also it's simply important for Virginia to remove this discriminatory.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Delegate Torian.
Mr. Chair, I think we get the point very much, and Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
You have the floor.
I move to report.
Okay, we have a motion to report. Second, please, clerk will open the roll.
This is the Otis Campbell bill.
Thank you. The clerk will close the roll. It's 8-0. Report with a substitute. Thank you, Delegate Foy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
All right, Delegate Simon, HB 911.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I feel like I'm in a little bit of a no-win situation here because on the one hand, I think I've been told to fill some of the time. On the other hand, I risk offending the chairman of appropriations. So let me go ahead and launch into
No,
it.
no, Mr. Chairman, to be quite candid with you, the delegate had to go back to a meeting. Great bill, great testimony. We just wanted her to go on back to other committee. That's all.
I understand.
But you, Mr. Chairman, that's up to your discretion.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and stretch then while we wait. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I've got House Bill 911, which it says in the title it ends the ban on internet lottery sales and would allow sports betting. And I understand from the get-go here that this isn't going to be the vehicle that goes forward. But I did want to talk to you a little bit about, I think, what was different and unique about my bill, and hope that as you guys work to craft a bill that will move forward through this process, you incorporate some of the ideas that were embodied in my bill in whatever product it is that comes out of the committee. So with that, a couple of interesting notes. One of these, I really came to this process looking to create a sports bettors bill of rights. It was one of those situations where I went to DLS and said, I'd like to create a sports bettors bill of rights. They said, well, first we have to legalize sports betting. So what do you want your bill to legalize sports betting to look like so that we can create this other piece, which is the consumer protection piece? So just for the record, mostly for my father's edification, because he's a consumer advocate by background. My real goal in doing this was to make sure that whatever we do in Virginia has a robust set of consumer protections for sports bettors, things like transparency. So one of the things my bill does that I don't think any of the other bills, or certainly not the other bill does, is it protects minors. It takes extra steps to make sure we don't have kids participating in internet lottery sales or in sports betting by requiring the permit holder to be responsible for using all available technology to verify a person's age. Requires permit holders to promptly refund any wagers placed on behalf of minors, and I say minors in this context, we mean anybody under 21. My bill sets the age at 21. And then make sure the permit holder will make available and promptly publish and facilitate parental control procedures so that, again, parents can lock their kids out of this in a way that makes sense. And then data security has been another big issue. We found this in the context of daily fantasy sports. There were some as that got rolling out, there were some problems with that. So permit holders have to comply with all state and federal requirements for data security and privacy of sports bettors, and to protect their confidential information. And again, permit holders may not share information that would personally identify the sports bettor with any third party. That's the other piece of this. We don't want to allow this to be a big data mining operation where you start to see what an internet bettor or a sports bettor, lottery buyer, what they bet on, what they like, and use that as a way to build a profile, an advertising profile of this person to start inundating them with third-party things. The platform ought to be, for placing the sports bets and not be a way of mining the person's individual data. So I'm hopeful that whatever you guys come up with will incorporate, again, some of those principles into the bill. I also have I'm not married to my tax rate. The tax rate in my bill is, I think, lower by half than Delegate Sickles. I think the JLARC recommendation was probably somewhere in between, so I don't know, what the pleasure of the committee will be on that. Mine has a prohibition on all amateur and youth sports. And again, I think that we want to make this. The real idea here is that folks are participating in this activity now. Whether we make it legal or not, Virginians are going to pull out their phones, and they're going to have the ability using their phones to place wagers on sports bets. And in many cases, it's unregulated. It's with unscrupulous characters on the other end. It's unreliable. And so the idea is to create an opportunity, a platform for Virginians who are going to do this anyway, to do it in a way that's safe, that's legal, and that provides the best possible consumer protections. I would say on this issue of whether we want to allow for internet lottery sales generally, although that wasn't the focus of bringing my bill forward.
Okay, Delegate, I think we get it. You've done a great job stalling. We appreciate it.
So with that, I understand that you guys are probably going to roll my bill, and the Delegate Sickles' very, very fine bill, and I hope you'll think about some of the things that I mentioned during my presentation.
Thank you. I think we will take that into consideration. Delegate Sickles.
No questions for the patron? No.
I do it, yeah.
Do you want to do a motion to roll mine now, or you do it later?
Yeah, do we have a motion to
So move.
incorporate Simon's bill in the Delegate Sickles? We have a motion, motion and a second. It's a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? The ayes have it. We rolled your bill into Delegate Sickles' bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate Simon.
Thank you, and I apologize. I was upstairs giving a bill and could not get out of the room. Thanks so much. This is the bill I've been most excited about since I've been working on it for ever since the Supreme Court made its ruling in May of 18 that states other than Nevada could do sports.
Delegate Sickles,
Yes.
do you mind if do you need to be anywhere else for another bill, or are you done?
Do you want to do Lamont's?
Yeah, can we do, because he's
I heard
chairing.
that. That's fine.
He's chairing another committee.
No, I'm good now.
All right,
I'm here.
so
All right.
we're primed and ready for you.
Okay.
Hang out, and we're going to take Delegate. We're going to start with. I'm looking at the chairman. We'll start with We'll start with Chairman Bagby, Delegate Bagby. You want?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee,
Thank you,
how are
Delegate.
you all? Good to see you. House Bill 1589, as we have seen these regulated gray machines in gas station bars and truck stops, these machines look like a cross between a slot machine and an arcade. People place bets and maybe they sometimes win money, but there are no rules to protect the betting, the public or the businesses that host the machines from potentially fraudulent activity. And so these machines are across the Commonwealth today, and this bill is intended to make sure that they are properly taxed and regulated, and those dollars go back into not only the state funds, but also a portion of it goes to the local funds. I believe there is a substitute.
We have a substitute. Do we have a motion to? We have a motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Nay. All right. The substitute is passed. Delegate Bagby.
So as you can imagine, as you know, there are dollars associated with this that have been included in the governor's budget. This proposes a 35% tax, and 30% of that will go into state coffers, and 5% of it will go directly back to localities, which is much different than anything that we've done with gaming before. Lottery is a little bit different, and certainly if we move forward with casinos, that would be a little bit different. Even when we look at some of our friends that have machines of other natures throughout the Commonwealth, they're set up in respective localities. But this is a situation where Dumfries or Petersburg or a locality like Richmond or Henrico will actually be able to make the decisions themselves. The businesses in those communities will be able to make the decisions themselves, and they will be able to be in the gaming business. And the locality in which they reside will also see that 5% come directly back to their locality.
Do you have anything further to add?
I think you're going to have a lot of discussion. I don't think you need me talking anymore.
Okay, that's wise, Delegate Bagby. Here's the plan. We have a lot of folks here who want to speak, and we're going to give both sides. First, we're going to hear from Delegate Bulova on his bill, which is in the same category here. And if Delegate Reed shows up, we'll do Delegate Reed. And then what we'll do is we'll have 20 minutes for each side. And then whoever comes up, and we'll have the clock on over here. And as the clock ticks down, be mindful of your time so that other folks behind you can get to testify. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you.
I know you have to get back to your Education Subcommittee as well. Delegate Bulova.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. This is House Bill 881. Mr. Chairman, and members of the subcommittee, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for your thoughtful consideration. I know that there is a ton of moving parts with all of the gaming bills that we're dealing with. And this is only meeting one of two that you're going to be dealing with a whole host of gaming issues, and so I appreciate it. And if you're like me, you've been visited by dozens and dozens of people, and so I don't think that I need to talk about or go into the weeds about what gray machines are or what they do, because I think we kind of understand what those are. What you have before you today, though, are really three very distinct policy options. And so the first, which is my bill, is whether we want gray machines at all, or we can regulate and tax them as games of skill, as has been proposed by Delegate Bagby, or we can go all in, and Delegate Reed has one to regulate and tax both games of chance and skill. What I hope, though, is that just because games of skill have exploded in Virginia, that we don't feel trapped into the policy decision that all we have at our disposal is to tax and regulate them. And all I ask is that we take a little bit more thoughtful and deliberate approach to these kind of questions. I want you to think about what your reaction would have been 2 years ago if you were sitting at this dais and a bill was allowed to allow gray machines, and that was introduced, and so you were considering that right now. And the question I want to ask is would you have voted for that, knowing that it would tank lottery sales to the extent that just this year we're going to have to backfill lottery by about $15 million? Lottery estimates that they could eventually cost about $40 million in profits per year. And would you have voted for it if you knew that it was going to hurt charitable gaming to the extent that we've seen now a slew of bills that have come in with them asking to up the number of games that they can have just in order to be able to compete? And would you have voted for it knowing that we would have literally thousands of these machines throughout Virginia in just a matter of a year or two? JLARC estimates that there was more than 9,000 as of October 2019. 4,500 of these machines are in stores directly competing with lottery. And then let's say you agree, as I do, that we need to increase revenue for our schools. If you could choose a revenue source, would this be the most equitable way to do it? Now, of course, none of us ever saw this bill. Rather, the distributors relied on a letter from ABC saying that this would not be an ABC violation. And in the words of ABC Chief Executive Travis Hill, and this I think was reported in the Washington Post, what occurred was a kind of broadcasting our letter representing that the Commonwealth had somehow approved these devices overall. And so, Mr. Chairman, we are here considering a bill on sports betting. We are considering casinos, and we are doing both in a thoughtful, deliberative manner. And my question is what kind of message does it send to other groups if we decide to abdicate on the question of whether we should and simply go to the question of whether we ought to tax and regulate? Even more so, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to ask ourselves, is this really in the best interest of Virginia, that we create a system where you have many gambling parlors in pretty much every common or corner of the Commonwealth? I hope you will think that our policies need to be more thoughtful than that. Our children and our children's children will need to live with these decisions. Mr. Chairman, my bill is relatively straightforward, really short. Defines illegal gambling as the offering for play of any game of skill. Defines a skill game to be a machine that requires the insert of a coin or a token or similar measure to activate the play, the outcome of which is determined by any element of skill. And then it makes exemptions for amusement games at family entertainment centers such as the famous claw machine and skee ball, as we all enjoyed growing up as kids, that are exchanged for non-cash merchandise. Mr. Chairman, that's what my bill does. Happy to take any questions after we hear from proponents and opponents.
Okay, thank you, Delegate. So that's what we're going to do. The clerk will set the timer for 20 minutes. And the clock's right over here on my left, underneath the big screen television. And we will, for first 20 minutes, of those folks who are in support of the gray machines, Delegate Bagby's bill, I guess, is really, and then we'll have 20 minutes for those who are in.
I'm Michael Bannon, my 20 minutes in here.
Okay. Okay, well, we can, why don't we, we'll do 10 minutes on each side? Is that good enough, Delegate Bagby? 10 minutes? Okay.
5 works for me.
All right, we'll do, we'll do,
You'll get the point.
okay, so we'll, let's try to do, I think, let's be fair, because we've got a lot of people here. We'll do 10 minutes, but if you can do it in 20 seconds, that lets more people speak. Please, and what you have to do first is state your name, and if you're with some group, you can say that. If you're not, it doesn't matter, just who you are, and then go ahead and speak. Thank you very much. We're going to set the clock now. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Carter Hutchinson from the Governor's Office. We support Delegate Bagby's bill. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Tom Lisk, representing Queen of Virginia Skill and Entertainment. We support the Bagby substitute. We came into Virginia actually 4 years ago and have operated in the Commonwealth and have helped thousands of businesses increase their revenue, not only from game receipts, but from other business receipts. Bars and restaurants have increased sales, increased employment. Convenience stores, the same thing. The operators who distribute the game, 60 Virginia independent businesses have profited as well. And I'm going to let them speak to you. But let me just make one point very clear. We oppose the ban. We think that hurts the businesses in Virginia. We oppose VGTs, but we do support the Bagby substitute. And if you just look at line 2725, it makes it clear. A skill game means the player has the ability to win every single time. It's not chance. It is based on skill, and this bill makes that definition very tight and clear. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Hermie Sadler from Emporia, Virginia, Sadler Brothers Oil Company. We operate truck stops and convenience stores in Southside Virginia. This skill gaming industry has become a big part of our business in recent years. We have 15 locations, employ 205 people. This industry, a part of our business, has enabled us to add, in our estimation, about 25 jobs to our company. I'll also say that we do things the right way. We run all of our business through our books, through our P&Ls. Everything is there. We support regulation. I'll also say on the truck stop side that one thing that many people don't bring up is that a lot of truck drivers that are traveling have to be in place 24 to 48 hours. And we find that if we have this entertainment option for them to be on our stops, not only are they doing that, but also they go to the convenience stores, truck stops across the street, other places too, and we've seen a lot of positive reaction from that as well. I'll also say that, I think we've really got something here that will be good for a lot of people if we find the right vehicle to go by, because in our case, if we lose this, we lose 25 jobs immediately, and a lot of these people behind us will be going out of business. So I hope we'll take all that into consideration, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, John Newberry, Venco Business Solutions, Bland, Virginia. Been in the amusement business a little over 50 years. I have 54 employees with a payroll of a little over $3 million. The skill games are very important. They've really helped a ton of people, a ton of businesses. They've helped our industry. It's very important that the state legalize them. The state makes some money on them. They need to get money out of it. You're talking about making skill games illegal. Our industry was based on skill. Every Walmart, every Denny's, all these locations, the food cities, they've all got skill games in them. And to ban skill games would really hurt our industry a lot. But to make them legal, state get their money, I don't think there would be anything any better. Questions?
Thank you. We still have 7 minutes.
Hi, I'm Ann Paskowitz. And my husband and I have been in the vending business since 1993. I have recently gone out on my own and started a new company here in Virginia. As a minority business owner, I also employ women who are trying to get back into the workforce after raising their families or need a second income. I'm asking you to oppose 881 on behalf of all of our small business owners, their employees, and their customers. We are just trying to give back and make a living. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is James Rafferty. I'm the managing partner of Glory Days Grill. We have 15 locations in Virginia, 2 here locally in Richmond. It helps us employ people. It's revenue for our business, and we do support the regulation. of the business. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. Rich Kelly, Hard Times Cafe, Northern Virginia. The restaurant business has been assaulted in the last number of years. Everybody sells meals, right? Gas stations, convenience stores, right? Food trucks, grocery stores, everybody sells meals, right? Okay, local mom and pop restaurants, right, have closed many restaurants and have struggled, right? Games of skill have been a bright light in the whole process, right? Because they provided an additional source of income. They've provided a reason for people to come in, a reason to stay longer, right? And a reason to enjoy the place, right? And it really has supported many, many activities. It was the major decision in my wife and I to extend 2 of our leases, right? And spend over $500,000 towards renovating the stores this year, right? We employ 100 people, right? And you know what? Games of skill haven't caused any problems. We haven't had any ABPs problems. We don't have any fights over games of skill, right? So I ask you to please oppose this bill and not ban games of skill. Thank you very much.
I can attest to your chili. It's really good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and 40 years. This is our 40th year, by the way.
Congratulations.
Chairman Krizik, subcommittee, thank you so much for taking time to hear me out. I'm a local business owner in Loudoun County, Virginia, Leesburg, Virginia. I have been in the restaurant business for 30-plus years. I started when I was a child, and this game of skill has come in and really allowed me to hire more employees. I'm doing a construction job on my kitchen, which has given me 3 more additional employees for a total of 30. It's a small business that allows me funds that create some marketing advantages that I can actually spend on marketing to compete as a small business, as well as the remodel that I'm starting February 1st, and provides extra benefits for employees, servers, bartenders, et cetera. So thank you so much for your time, and we oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner. My name is Gina Bozak, long-time gaming employee. I ran Colonial Downs from 1997 I was involved with Colonial Downs from 1997 until they closed down in 2014, leaving as Vice President of Operations. I now run Queen of Virginia Skills here in Virginia. I stand here before you for our 15 employees, all from Virginia, our 45 operators, small business operators, 2,200 location owners, 7,500 games out, and I ask you to look 2017 lottery numbers and see how the lottery was doing when we were here in 2017 and 2018, and when all of a sudden in 2019, when the ABC put their letter out that said they're not going to decide whether games are skill or not, the influx of other games that are not games of skill came into the industry. Our sales went down, the lottery sales went down, and the illegal games went up. I certainly know the difference between a game of chance and a game of skill, and if you just take the time to learn the game, you will know it's a game of skill. We self-regulate. We have 3 former ABC agents that go around to make sure nobody has more than 5 games. So when you walk into a convenience store and you see 15 or 20 games, or you walk to a storefront and you see 80 games, that's not us. We are games of skill, and we are here to support every one of these people that you see run their small businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman, my name is Barry Rutherford. I represent Primero Games. We're a game manufacturer out of Duluth, Georgia. We're one of the largest skill game manufacturers in Georgia, and skill gaming is kind of born out of this amusement industry, and it's not considered a slot machine. And so, any way we can clean up that confusion, we would love to do that. We've got a good opportunity in Virginia. It's a great state. We've got employees here. We've got infrastructure. We're building our business, and we compete against a lot of these guys out here. But we support an industry bill that is fair for our industry. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Shia. I come here as a private citizen. I just recently retired as a prosecutor for the state of Virginia for the last 30 years. So I have a little bit of a different take on this, and that is simply this. You're banning machines that even the patron has described as gray machines. So they were not illegal. which means that you might be in, you might need to compensate the people for which you're taking the machines from, because you're otherwise condemning property that's not illegal at this time. And the Constitution provides for compensation to people when their property is condemned. Now, I just wanted to mention that to the committee, that it might be something you might want to consider when you think about banning it. That would be on 881. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 50 seconds left.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I'm Colonel Randy Jensen, Northern Virginia, Leesburg area. I've been in business for 10 years. I own Clearview ATMs and Gaming. One of my first customers, Asmi, who spoke earlier, we haven't seen each other in 4 years. QVS has done great things for my family. But one great story I want to tell you just happened 2 days ago. I was in another location where these QVS machines were, and a little old lady, a little old man came up to me. And he said, "Are you the QVS guy?" I said, "No, ma'am, not for this location, somewhere else." I was taking care of the ATM. She said, "Thank you for these games, because my husband and I have been dating for 50 years. Every Friday we go out, and we can't drive to West Virginia anymore. We can't go to Maryland anymore." So you offer us something to do. We used to go skiing when we were younger, but we can't.
All right. Thank you very much. Time is up, but I know there's a lot of other folks here. Why don't we have everybody just raise your hand if you're of like mind with the folks who've just testified, or stand up even if you want. All right. So we have a lot of. Let the record show that there's a good crowd here in support of regulating these machines and keeping them out there. Okay, thank you very much. We have 10 minutes for the other side. Do we have anybody who wants to testify on behalf of Delegate Bulova's bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Steve Burrill, and I have the privilege of representing the Virginia VGT Coalition. It's a bill to do a level set so that other providers can come in and compete. That's one of the deficiencies, with all due respect to Delegate Bagby's bill, from our view, is it is limited to so-called games of skill. You can use your own judgment about whether there's skill involved or whether it's gambling. In our view, it's gambling. The problem is that bill is limited to only games of skill. The bill that's not yet presented, and we'll speak in favor of that later, the way the definition is set up, it refers to games of skill or gaming or a combination thereof. Either way, there's opportunity for competition from the existing provider and outside regulated entities. We want to be a part of that. We think that's what the Commonwealth deserves. And I think I have a representative of our coalition who'd like to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please state your name.
Michael Galetka. I'm here to say that we think that there's some changes that would allow for better regulation, more transparency, would allow for a more robust competition within the state by regulated operators with machines of both skill and chance, and that we believe that in the end that the allowing chance in will make for a better product for these small businesses, for their players, and will generate more money for the state.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, committee members. Sean Higgins, speaking here in opposition to Senator Bagby's bill.
Delegate Bagby. Not the Senate yet.
Delegate Bagby's bill. Obviously, some of the things, the particulars is, and I would point out to all the folks sitting behind me, there's a 25% share to the location. They're going to hear from Delegate Reed, I believe, a little later, and there's a 32% share from the VGT bill, which we are proposing that they follow. So I just want to say we are in support. This is a small business, whether it be a VGT or otherwise. The fact is, our bill is inclusive of games of skill in its definition. Unfortunately, the Bagby bill is not. It is exclusive. It limits it. And let's be clear. What we have here is a company and companies that came in. Got a letter that may or may not have said they were legal and used that to shove their foot in the door, and here we are 2 to 3 years later with the games. And I think Delegate Belova said it best is, the question is, if your option is continuing a quasi-monopoly that was forced upon the state or banning them, we would say ban them and fully vet all of the games and have a more open and honest discussion if you choose not to fully regulate the VGTs. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's still 6 minutes, but all right, we have nobody else that wants to speak. Hold on, we do have one more witness to testify. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. My name is Barrett Hardeman. I represent Grover Gaming. Speaking to the substitute specifically in Delegate Bagby's bill, just want to call your attention to line 2977, which if we're talking about bringing in competition to this marketplace, that limits these games to one type of gaming system. We'd just like to draw your attention to that. Assuming that the
Is that so that it says utilize software fills.
Yes, sir.
Is our software fills a licensed product of just one company?
That is my understanding of that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for that information. Delegate Bagby.
As I stood over there, I heard somebody, I remember my girlfriend and I's first date. It was at Bailey's on Broad Street, and I ordered fish and chips and had a nice beer, and I played a game of skill. And she hadn't left me yet.
Well, that's quite compelling.
This is a bit emotional for me. I'm sorry, Delegate Torrey. I'm getting a little choked up. But also, as I look in this room, you all asked the individuals who support this bill to stand up, and most of the room stood up. But I also would say, I'm not going to ask them to do it, but it's not, because it's not in proper order. But I would say, who owns a business in the Commonwealth of Virginia? Raise their hand. And then I would say, who owns a business that doesn't reside in the Commonwealth of Virginia? This is the only bill that we've been discussing in gaming that gives them a leg up, that gives them some skin in the game. Everything that we are discussing as it relates to gaming is someone else coming in and providing a service. This is the only one, the only thing that we have in which the small business in the Commonwealth of Virginia gets a piece of the pie. And
let's have some.
This is the only
let's
one.
keep it down a little bit, please.
This is the only one in which the localities get a piece of the pie. And so, do this one for the little guy.
All right, thank you, Delegate Bagby. You had the last one. We're going to hear from Delegate Belova, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the committee if there's any.
Mr. Chairman, I can't possibly follow Delegate Lamont Bagby, but thank you for your consideration. I think the policy choices are really clear. Again, I ask for you to think about, is this a decision that you would have made 2 years ago? And think about the ramifications with respect to allowing these to continue. So thank you very much. I also heard from Delegate Reed. He will not be able to make it here. He said, vote up or down on my bill or Delegate Bagby's bill. If both of them go down in flames, he's happy to go ahead and take those up later. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually understand that Delegate Sickles' bill, he has a similar bill as well. Would you like, and he would like to roll that one into Delegate Bagby's bill?
Yes,
the same thing, but less. Okay, without objection? Okay.
Let's make sure we got the right.
Yeah, what's the number of that bill? 903.
It's not on your docket.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's on there. Okay, then I see Delegate Hurst and Delegate Torian have requested to speak. Delegate Hurst.
I'll yield to...
Hold on, let's have a quick vote on the, sorry, Delegate Hurst. All those in favor of the rolling the two bills together into Delegate Bagby's bill, Delegate Sickles' bill, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that's rolled in. Thank you. Delegate Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will yield to the ranking member if that's what he would wish.
Delegate Torian.
Thank you, Delegate Hurst. I'd like to say to everyone gathered, there are times when we, as legislators, come here, we are always faced with some tough decisions. And they're not always easy. They're hard. And it's hard because we do not always please everyone. I've had several people to come to my office in regards to these bills. And one of the questions that I raised was, we're put in a position where we're either going to regulate and tax these machines. And I raised the question, why did they not come to us? When they recognized the issue, why did they not come to us? Why do we always have to be put in a position like this? The company that came into Virginia should have come to us and said, what is the proper thing to do? And not have to force us to do what we have to do today. It did not happen. And it's very disingenuous to put us in this kind of position. If people would simply do the right thing, if you want to do business in Virginia, you know that there's a process that we go through. You know that there's a level of accountability as well. And it's so unfortunate that we have to be in this position before all of you wonderful people. It is rather disturbing to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would somebody from Queen of Virginia Skill and Entertainment or designee come up to answer a few questions? So I do have a series of questions, Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. In the interest of time, just keep asking.
I'll try. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Tom, for coming up. Tell me again, Virginia, Queen of Virginia Skill and Entertainment is a subsidiary of what larger company?
To defer to Pace-O-Matic.
Pace-O-Matic.
A Georgia company, yes.
A Georgia company. Mr. Chairman, is it true that Pace-O-Matic has tried a similar strategy to allow for these machines to operate in other states?
Yes, sir. We're in a process in the District of Columbia where we received preliminary approval. We're in a process in Pennsylvania. We are exploring other states. But let me just be clear. When we came into Virginia, as we've gone into other states, under current Virginia law and the law of Pennsylvania and the law of other states, there is no requirement to get advance approval. But even though there's no such requirement, we first went to the regulatory authority responsible for people with ABC licenses, the ABC board, and then we went to every Commonwealth's attorney, every police chief, every local sheriff that would meet with us before we went into their jurisdiction. So we sought to go in through the front door. We sought approval. We didn't want to surprise anybody by putting our games into the Commonwealth, into any locality, without first going to the local authorities to explain how it was a game of skill, the legal basis for that, the legal opinions, and court cases from other states.
Mr. Chairman, so for our own edification, at what point does your terminal no longer become a game of chance and become a game of skill? Does it happen immediately when a player first participates in playing the game, or does it have to accrue over time in order to develop that skill?
It is a game of skill from the first play to the last. You have the ability to win every single time. I'd be happy to share a video with you to show it. I'd be happy to show you the actual game. You get to preview the game. If you lose, you play that game. If you lose, play a secondary game that's a follow me, kind of like a Simon Says, that based on memory, dexterity, and the speed with which you learn to play the game, you can win every single time. And the definition in Delegate Bagby's substitute bill confirms that. It can't be a game that the player can't win except on chance. It has to be a game the player has to be able to win on skill each and every play.
Mr. Chair, so whenever I've done casino gaming, when you play blackjack, when you try and make sure that you have the odds stacked in your favor, you would need to be able to win at least 50.1 or 51% of the time. So my question is from the moment you begin, you have a greater than 50% chance of being able to win?
You have a 100% chance of being able to win on every single play.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you also conceivably have a chance to win 100% of the time playing roulette, and yet that's still not considered a game of skill. That's considered a game of chance. I just wonder, again, how specifically you can say that your machines are a game of skill and not subject to chance when I would say the majority of novices or even people who play your machines for a few days or for a few weeks still wouldn't be winning more than 50% of the time. The potentiality is there, but what do the actual results say?
Well, the actual results say that our payout is about 92.5%. The money that is played goes back to the player. So there is a very high rate. That's much higher than you would see in any casinos, any programmed slot machines. But I would say, the roulette example, yes, in theory you could win every single time, but your winning is not based on your skill. The winning is based on the randomness of where the ball lands in the wheel. As opposed to our games, you can win every single time based on your play of the game, based on how you play that game, the choices you make, and how you follow the pattern in the follow me game.
Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what are the skills, if I'm going to be playing this on my first go-around, that I'm going to need to have in my back pocket that are going to make sure that I am actually skillfully adept at playing this game and not just leaving it up to chance?
Well, pattern recognition in the initial game, looking at the tic-tac-toe and figuring out what square that you would pick. And if you fail to win that game, then the follow me game, the skill is memory, seeing a pattern, memorizing that pattern, being able to follow the pattern, and some level of dexterity, because it takes a certain degree of time. I mean, you have to try to follow that pattern within a reasonable period of time. You can't just take 5 minutes to figure out what was that pattern. So your memory, your dexterity, your pattern recognition, these are all skills of a player that are not present in roulette or other casino-style games.
Last question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, last question, and then Delegate Aird.
Thank you. So the machine that you're describing has two elements to it. You fail at the first game, I would think that means that you are not skilled at completing the first part of that game. The question that I have for you is when you get that next opportunity, you would call that a second what?
That is a second game.
A second game or a second chance?
Well, because it's a different game, I'd say it's a second game, but it gives you a second chance to win on a play.
All right, Delegate Aird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, I also want to echo some of the comments that Delegate Torian opened up with in expressing our appreciation for every small business represented here this evening, and every individual who took time out of their day to come before us. There was some mention of the little guy earlier during the testimony and looking out for the little guy, but I just want to add that there's another little guy that we're not talking about. And that's the individual that's showing up in locations to engage with these machines, and the stories that I am already hearing about how they are being negatively impacted. Prior to this session, my locality came to me, Dinwiddie County, and talked about the unintended consequences of having so many of these machines in such prevalent locations, talking about how individuals who are already in economic distressful situations furthering themselves into a hole. Throughout this entire debate, there has been no conversation about addiction and or about how someone can be negatively impacted by engaging too much in utilizing these machines. And so when we talk about looking out for the little guy, I respect each and every person who is a small business owner, but I would also say there is another little guy, and that's the individuals who suffer by engaging in these machines too much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Aird. All right. Excuse me, Delegate Torian.
Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate at this time to ask for the vote on HB 881?
Yeah, we'll take these two in order. We'll start with HB 881, Delegate Bulovas' bill. Do we have a motion? And
Move to report.
Second.
we have a motion to report and a second. The clerk will open the roll. Okay, the bill passes 7-1. I'm sorry, 8-1. It says 7-1. 7-1. Now we'll take up the Delegate Bagby's bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate Knight.
having voted on the prevailing side, I'd like to bring that vote back up again so a member can change their vote.
Okay, we have a motion to bring up. Is that a voice vote? No, we've got a recorded vote. Motion to reconsider. We have to bring. It's a voice vote. Okay. All those signify by saying aye if they're in favor. Okay, opposed. Okay, the ayes have it. We bring that back up. The clerk, please bring it up. Okay, it's 8-0. Thank you. Delegate Bagby's bill, which is 1589. Do we have a motion? We have a motion to lay the bill on the table. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second. The clerk will bring up the vote is 8-0 to lay the bill on the table. Thank you. Now we're going to finish Delegate Sickles' presentation on 903. I'm sorry, 896. Okay, Delegate Sickles.
Good evening, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman. Have before you today a bill that we started working on last year when sports betting became legal outside of the state of Nevada. The bill is a bill that is not tethered to any casino or any other building or brick and mortar building, but one that we can start if we move forward playing legal games that are being played today illegally in sports across the United States.
Delegate, we're having some of the folks in the audience can't hear you. Can we close the doors, please?
Yeah, I can't hear
or
myself.
Everybody that wants to get out, please. Hold on, Delegate Sickles. We're gonna be at ease for a moment. Thank you, everybody, for the decorum here. We have a substitute. We're going to pass out the substitute. Council's passing out the substitute. Do I have a motion to?
So moved.
Okay, the substitute's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Okay, I'm going to just walk through some of the things the sports betting mobile app would do for people who would be eventually licensed by the lottery board. It prohibits betting on Virginia college sports. It reduces the tax rate in the original introduced bill from 20 to 15%. It requires the lottery to issue at least 4 and no more than 12 permits or licenses, and instructs the lottery board to decide that based on generating the most revenue to the Commonwealth. It expands legal betting to include any athletic event, motor race event, electronic sports event, and competitive video game event. It requires the lottery to publish a Consumers Protection Bill of Rights before issuing a license to any operator. It prohibits Tier 2 or in-play, in-game bets on all college sports. It allows operators to carry over their net operating losses for up to 1 year and deduct them against their tax liability. In the provision that requires lottery to consider certain data in determining whether a sports governing body has provided official league data on commercially reasonable terms, and changes one of the criteria. This is the official league data issue. Changes one of the criteria from the availability of a sports governing body's official league data for Tier 2 bets from more than one authorized source to availability of sports governing bodies' official league data for Tier 2 bets from one or more authorized sources. This was made at the request of the NFL. 2.5% of the revenue goes toward the Problem Gambling Fund. As most of you know, this is not the most lucrative type of betting in the world. They say that people who bet on sports events are a different kind of bettor. 95% of the revenue generated goes back to the players. And so this would raise some money for Virginia. We are now very, very active bettors on mobile apps now. They're all illegal. And or we drive across the border to play in Maryland if you had a Maryland, but they're not up and running yet. But that would be the case. The Washington, D.C. is about to start their unique approach to this same subject. I think we have a solid bill here that is consistent with recommendations made by JLARC, and I would just end with that and thank all the people who have helped with this bill over the last year and a half to get it to this point. So I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have, or try to, or get someone who knows the answer.
Does anyone on the committee have any questions for the Patriot?
That people may want to testify.
Thank you, Delegate. Do we have any questions for the delegate? No. Do we have folks who want to testify in support? We're going to give you 10 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. My name is Andrew Winchell. I'm Director of Government Affairs for FanDuel Group. Thank you for allowing me to testify in favor of House Bill 896 today. In opening a legal market for sports betting, we must first acknowledge that an illegal offshore market exists and has been thriving for years in advertising to customers in Virginia. These offshore sites are not regulated, do not provide any tax revenue, and do not provide consumer protections. Accordingly, we support the 3 following principles to defeat the offshore market, protect customers, and maximize state tax revenue and business growth. First, allow sports betting to take place online and via mobile devices without any unnecessary hurdles. The numbers tell the tale on this. In New Jersey, 87% of sports wagers came from mobile devices in December of 2019, and for Pennsylvania, it was over 86% of all wagers. Second, allow multiple operators to compete for Virginia's businesses. If the goal is to eliminate the illegal market and capture as much of that activity on legal, regulated platforms, then we believe an open market that permits real competition amongst experienced operators is the only legitimate choice for Virginia. Third and finally, sports betting taxes must be fixed and reasonable. Sports betting is a low-margin business, and most operators pay out between $93 to $95 for every $100 they take in wagers. When you factor in marketing costs, regulatory costs, state and federal taxes, and other fixed costs, legal sports books operate on a very thin margin. Thank you for your time, and I'll be able to answer any questions.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Julia Carlo Hammond on behalf of MGM. We support this bill. We thank the patron for all of his hard work. There are a couple of items we'd love to keep working with him on to make this an even better piece of legislation. One thing I'll note, today the American Gaming Association came out with their numbers for the Super Bowl, and they're betting approximately 26 million people will bet on it, 3 million more than last year, and the vast majority of it will be done on the online or on the black market where we will have no ability to track. I'd also make one other note, if anyone's concerned about the integrity of those who will participate in this process, anyone who is licensed to do any kind of gaming in Nevada knows that we do anything in any other state that isn't up to par. We get in trouble in any other jurisdiction. We risk our Las Vegas operations. And so anyone who's going to be doing this will be doing and complying with any of the rules you set forth.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dan Walsh. I'm a lobbyist at the Washington firm Farragut Partners. I represent a group called Idea Growth, which is the trade association for everybody in the internet and mobile betting industry, from operators, software licensors, data collectors, payment processors, et cetera. We do support the bill. We congratulate the sponsor on it for embracing internet and mobile is the only way to compete with the illegal market. I'll associate myself with what others said. We do object to the official data provisions. There's been legal betting in Nevada for decades. There's been legal betting in Europe for decades. There are 13 states up and running today, and none of those have an official data mandate. But official data is used extensively in all of those because official data is great from a marketing standpoint. We still believe the free market's the best way to deal with that. There are two companies in the U.S. that really do data, Sportradar and Genius Sports. Sportradar is a member of our association. But with that said, we do thank the committee for taking it up, and we think it's a good bill.
Hold on. Wait, first moment, we have a question from Delegate Hurst.
I have a question for the witness here. So you said that that data is used for marketing purposes. Could you expound on that for me?
No. So if you can tell your players that you're using official data that's going to attract players to your brand, and you're going to be able to offer a granularity of bets that you can't do with non-official data that's gotten off TV, like if you want to take a bet on whether Tom Brady throws for a touchdown in the third quarter, you don't need official data to do that. You can do that off TV. But if you're going to take a bet on the top speed that the running back's going to run in the third quarter, you absolutely do need official data for that. So having access to official data lets you take a quality and a granularity of bets that non-official data won't. Did that answer your question, Delegate?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We have 5 minutes and 45 seconds. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Betsy Daly with the University of Virginia. As you may know, the college presidents of the public institutions, and I believe the private institutions as well, opposed gaming and wagering on college sports. So we really appreciate Delegate Sickles' efforts to control that to a certain extent, as well as eliminate the prop bets, which are the Tier 2 bets. We also very much appreciate the major research fund he has in his bill and hope that will go forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations on the championship last year.
Thank you, Chairman Krizik and members of the subcommittee. My name is Dean Hesterman. I'm the Director of Issues Management for Caesars Entertainment. Caesars owns or operates more than 50 casinos and is licensed in 19 jurisdictions in 4 countries. What I'm going to talk about today, the foundation is our 80 years of experience in managing and owning gaming facilities across the casino, sportsbook, and internet gambling sectors. We support the bill. We support regulated legal sports wagering. In particular, we applaud the bill for its emphasis on consumer protection, and in particular, its enlightened approach on responsible gambling. We support all of the bill's responsible gambling components, and we suggest you go a little bit further. One suggestion here would be to extend the self-exclusion system statewide, such that someone who bans himself from one of the permit holders is effectively banning him or herself from all of the permit holders. That would be consistent with how self-exclusion is administered across the gambling sectors. The second consideration I would ask you to make would be to require operators to make voluntary deposit and loss limits available for its customers. This is relatively easy to do in the online sphere, and we encourage you to do that as a consumer protection measure. I think from the previous discussion, you understand that profit margins in this business are thin, and the point of legalized sports betting is to transition customers from the illegal market, which has an enviable tax rate of 0%, to the legal market. And the movement toward a tax rate in the neighborhood of 10-ish%, we think, is a movement in the right direction. On the official league data issue, I would echo concerns that you've already, or statements that you've already made. Official league data does have its place in the sports betting business. We just believe it doesn't have a place memorialized and mandated in statute. And one final point that I don't think has been addressed. House Bill 896 requires real-time data sharing with sports governing bodies, ostensibly to promote integrity. This approach is unheard of anywhere in the country, and it's not feasible. Instead, we support a multi-jurisdictional integrity monitoring system focused on suspicious activity notice that are widely disseminated across state borders and related MOUs with regulators who interface with law enforcement. There is a body that does this right now in the United States, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's called the Sports Wagering Integrity Monitoring Association. I think this approach has far more merit and promise than an onerous requirement for real-time data sharing with the leagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, there's 2 minutes and 28 seconds, and there's a number of folks, so thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Andy Levinson. I'm a Senior Vice President at the PGA Tour. I stand here before you representing the PGA Tour, the NBA, and Major League Baseball. And we do support House Bill 896, and we appreciate Delegate Sickles' work on this endeavor. This bill contains a number of integrity and consumer protection provisions in it that protect our competitions, and it protects our fans who are going to be engaging in this activity.
We have a question for you. One, Delegate Van Valkenburg.
We can wait till they've all gone.
Okay, all right, sorry.
You've heard some comments about the official league data requirement, and that is simply because there is no legitimate, safe alternative for Virginians if they are going to be engaging in live in-play betting. So what we're saying is, if you're going to engage in in-play betting, which is betting after the competition commences, then you should use one single source of data. That's the data that we, the leagues, collect. It's the official record and the official statistic. We invest incredible amounts to collect that information. At a golf tournament, that's data on more than 30,000 shots in each tournament. Requires a significant amount of infrastructure. The pirated data alternatives pose a risk to consumers. So we feel very strongly in the official league data requirement. The second thing that was mentioned was data sharing, and that's simply about transparency. We believe that the leagues, the operators, and the regulators should be able to have visibility in the activity on our sports. So again, we do support this bill, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. We've got. I'm going to add a few seconds because I've been interrupting a few times. Anybody else want to speak? There's about, let's say, about a minute left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. Alex Thorpe, Commonwealth Strategy Group, on behalf of Seminole Hard Rock. We support the delegates' leadership on this issue, and I would just echo the concerns from the gentleman from Caesars. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Mr. Chairman, Matt Moran on behalf of Penn National Gaming. To clarify, is that the time remaining for support, or is there a time?
This is, yeah, for support.
Okay, I would like to speak, I think, slightly in opposition to the bill at this
Okay, well,
point.
you can wait.
Okay.
Sit down, please.
I think I'm the last one.
Do we have anybody else? No, okay. Now you can stand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me be very clear. I think broadly, Penn National Gaming, which is the largest regional gaming operator in the country, has 41 facilities in 19 states. Also, probably the most experienced regional sportsbook operator. Supports what the delegate is trying to do with this bill. Certainly supports the efforts to bring a sportsbook to Virginia. The issue with this bill is largely around the official league data requirement, and to be clear, of the 20 or so states that have adopted sports betting, only 3 have official league data requirements. Nevada does not have an official league data requirement. And it comes down to this: the General Assembly should not be pre-negotiating the terms of a contract between private parties. The operators, of course, would like to use the best data so they can provide the best odds for their bettors, but in this case, if you're setting up a framework that only leads to one outcome, then you're not really setting up a framework at all. You're simply dictating that the leagues get to determine the providers of the data. The providers then get to set the price, and the operators are beholden to that. So throughout this process, I think we will continue to work with you on the official league data aspect, and would appreciate your consideration on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else against?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Todd Gackey with the Family Foundation.
Thank you.
You know, I think that since some are going in partial opposition, maybe those are in complete opposition like me should get another full 10 minutes.
All right, you can have 20 minutes if you want, but we'll remember that.
I'm just kidding. Listen, it's because of our deep concern for families, for the most disadvantaged Virginians, that we want and we implore you to reject all forms of gambling. Virginia has long had a respect for individual liberty, but government should never use that means to establish programs that profit off the misfortune of others. Let me leave you with give you this statistic that in 2018, Americans were losing $224,505 per minute to commercialized gambling, and that's a significant amount of money. And it's critical because of problematic gambling. 47% of pathological gamblers are likely to have a divorce, compared to 25% of non-gamblers. 63% of pathological gamblers have suicidal thoughts or attempt suicide, and 3 out of 5 engage in criminal activity to support their addiction. These are serious concerns, and I would also ask you to consider the youth, because online gambling, sports betting, this is all becoming very popular with our youth, and we need to be very concerned about what policies we put in place that are going to impact our youth going forward. So again, I'd ask that you oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one last witness here to testify. State your name, please.
Joe Briggs with the NFL Players Association. And I am not in opposition of the bill or support of the bill. I just wanted to raise some questions on behalf of some of those guys that are going to play in that game that people are going to bet on.
Okay, I think that's fair. You've got the floor.
So I've been around to a number of different states, and I've had the opportunity to read a bunch of legislation. I'm counsel at the NFL Players Association, and my guys have sent me here just to raise some questions. If I were to look at your horse track bills in the state of Virginia and the laws around horse racing, I would see protections for the way the field must be put down. I would see protections on the medical information about those horses, the people who have the ability to touch those horses before the race, and the people who have the ability to talk to those horses after. In all the gambling legislation that I've seen talked about today, I've not seen one reference to a player. I've not seen one reference to the people that are being bet on by the people that are coming to these events, the people that are expressing their joy at winning on these bets or their disbelief in losing on these bets. I've heard conversation about how fast they run and how they may be bet on because of how fast they're running, or maybe how high they're jumping, maybe even a pass that they didn't catch at the time that it was thrown. These are all things that are concerning to us. So I have 4 things that I would say, hopefully within my time period. The first thing I'd say is that there needs to be a comprehensive review of any criminal codes in the state of Virginia to make sure that law enforcement knows exactly when the line is crossed, when someone approaches a person that's participating in a competition and trying to either influence them or maybe even harm them because of a performance that they've had. The second thing I would say is my guys, the players in the National Football League, would love to know if they are approached in that way, who they should call. Should it be the team security officer who has no duty under this bill to report anything to you, and the house of cards that you've built your gambling operation on could fall down and crumble because a guy doesn't want to play in a game because he's been threatened? The third thing I would say to you is perhaps some whistleblower protections, maybe having a phone number that someone should call, maybe some notification possibilities that they would have to figure out the multi-state compact that was discussed earlier. That's a great idea, by the way, because a game that's played in Arizona by a team from Washington State against a team from Massachusetts, where on the last play of that game, instead of handing the ball off, they decide some reason to pass the ball, a lot of money could move, and a lot of people could have some thoughts about why that money moved, and they could make some allegations about that. But the players may not know who they should report those allegations or maybe even some of those confrontations to. And the third thing I would say, yes, running fast down the field is a thing that people are tracking these days, but that's not the only thing they're tracking. They're also tracking the heart rate of our guys on the field. And because college athletes, even if you decide to leave them out of this bill, other states may not. They may have some interest in the college student athletes that are here in the state of Virginia and how their heart rates are being monitored. Now, under their national letter of intent, the colleges and universities have the ability to put sensors on them. That's just a fact. I have no opinion about that. But after 4 years at those colleges and universities, they come into the pros, and now we have longitudinal information about their bodies, the movements of their bodies, and their biometric data. Someone having access to that information is something that's concerning to us. There's nothing in this bill that would prevent that information from being given out, and there's nothing in this bill that protects any of these people who are betting on this information from knowing that the person sitting right next to them may have insider information that they don't have. So they're actually competing against people who have more information than they would. So with that, I'll say that perhaps there's some different considerations that could be added, maybe some amendments that can be proposed. I apologize for coming to this late. I'm a lawyer. I've been busy. We've had a football season that I've been busy helping out our players get through. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. I just have a really quick question for you. So who's going to win the Super Bowl? No, I'm just kidding.
I can tell you the answer. Football players.
Yeah, there you go. That's the. I appreciate it. You're not late because the way bills are made and passed and legislation, becomes a bill becomes a law. This is only step one. Where we're just a subcommittee, then it goes to a committee, and then it goes to the floor, then it goes over to the Senate. So there's a lot of opportunity for amendments and things to happen. So your voice is definitely important, and we appreciate you coming. Thank you.
One last thing I'd say is I represent the NFL Players Association, but I work very closely with the Basketball Players Association and all other Major League Players Associations, baseball, hockey, and even Major League Soccer. We all work together and usually travel together on these issues. I would say that they have similar concerns to the concerns that I've raised here to you today.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And definitely, I recommend you talk to the patron at some point. Thank you. Okay, Delegate Sickles. Do we have two, Delegate Knight and Van Valkenburg are on the queue here. Do you want to go first, Delegate Knight? Okay, Delegate Knight.
Mr. Chairman, I got a series of questions. If it's okay, I'll roll through them. I don't mean your bill any harm, Delegate Sickles. Just want to ask some questions if I could. Does this thing repeal Virginia? I mean, does this repeal the prohibition on Virginia lottery tickets? Does this allow them to be sold over the internet?
Yes.
Okay.
But only in the manner they do now. It would not allow them to become like a slot machine on the telephone, like what we've seen in the halls here from Pennsylvania. It would not do that.
Okay. And Delegate Sickles, I've got a couple of questions here, and I don't know how you want to handle it. If you would want a couple of things that I would ask you to consider to amend, if you wanted to do it between now and full or do it now, I'll leave that up to the chairman and you. But one question that they did bring up a good thing on some of this gambling that we may have on this voluntary exclusion. If you would want to put it in your bill that once someone puts a voluntary exclusion in there, it's voluntary for this, and if we happen to get to casinos, I think that's a good idea.
A universal exclusion for
Yes, sir.
everybody who gets a license in Virginia.
Yes, sir.
I think that's something to consider.
Yes, sir. I think that'd be good. And then you also said that the bill said that you're going to offer no less than 4, no more than 12 permits. That's
That's how it's written now.
Okay.
That's been a moving target.
Okay.
And my personal concern is to give the lottery the flexibility to raise as much money for the state as we can. I mean, and some people believe limiting the number does that. Some people says having more. I think there would be. I want to keep this separate from the casino business, and I think if you do legalize casinos, which is going to be another nice hearing, Mr. Chairman, they will expect to have a brick and mortar sports book, and in my view, in this bill, a separate license would be needed to get a mobile. I think if you invest large dollars in Virginia in a casino, that getting one of these licenses associated with your brick and mortar investment would be highly likely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question that I had is I talked to you the other day on here and on starting roughly on line 584. You said in this bill, submit an application to the director, and it says then you would pay $250. And I had mentioned to you, maybe with the application, you would submit $50,000 to cover the background check. If a license was issued, then maybe you'd want it to be $200,000 because you have a renewal of $200,000. It might be more consistent.
Delegate Knight, I'd like to just explore that. I do, on the surface, that sounds like a reasonable idea. And I commit to you to work on that when we're up on the 13th floor with this bill, where I hope it's going to go.
That's all.
Okay, thank you, Delegate. Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions.
Go ahead and
I'll
just
start
ask
with my
them.
narrower one first. I had been talking with Joe earlier, and I thought he brought up a really valid point about sports governing bodies. And so, as an example, if everybody will turn to line 752. All right, 752 says, a sports governing body may notify the department that it desires to restrict, limit, or prohibit sports betting on its sporting events by providing notice in accordance with the requirements prescribed by the director. A sports governing body may request to restrict the types. Then if you go down to part 2, right, it says the sports governing body shall bear the burden of establishing to the satisfaction of the director that the relevant betting pose an integrity risk. And if you go to the definition of sports governing body on lines 539, right, it talks about how the sports governing body is an organization that prescribes rules and enforces codes of conduct. And so the question would be, right, if you're a professional athlete and you're associated with the Players Association, it might also be, to the point of player protection, it might also make sense to provide a mechanism whereby the Players Association could do a similar thing. The player has faced, somebody trying to do something to the integrity of the basketball game, and their closer relationship is with the Players Association than it is with the league. Or they might not even be in the league at the moment, but they might be part of the Players Association. It might make sense to look at that. And so that, I guess, I don't know if that's for council or for the patron or if that's just me making a random observation. But it struck me as an important point, and I guess, yeah.
I mean, we have Delegate Sickles. I think there's going to be a few things you're going to want to amend before full committee. So you might want to consider that, and that sounds like a friendly amendment.
So I guess that was a statement. That was not a question.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chairman, could you do one more thing? And this is a broader issue. This is a bigger issue. You know, our version bans Virginia college sports, and I believe that the other body, the inferior body, has chosen not to do that. And it strikes me that if we're going to ban Virginia college sports, why don't we just ban college sports? I think for one thing, how do you separate them out? If we have a gambler betting on who's going to win the ACC, and they're betting on North Carolina, how does that not impact UVA? And so I just wanted to raise that as a point. I'm kind of agnostic on the question myself, but it strikes me if we're going to do it, maybe we just do it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Delegate Sickles, do you want to respond to that?
I think that people that commented on this felt more comfortable taking Virginia athletics out, but it's really key to remember that this betting is not going to stop in the legal market. That's why the Senate kept it in college in their bill, because there's nothing they can do in what's going on right now to stop what is happening. So I'm not personally, I can't tell you how much benefit I think there is to keeping Virginia sports out. And but I'm open to any suggestions, and we're going to live. I mean, if we pass this bill, people are going to live with what comes out. But there will be sports betting going on illegally or legally. It has been going on forever. I'm really sympathetic to the players and any type of a lot of the potential exploitation or problems it can cause. But this has been going on in Las Vegas forever. The only reason we're here today is the Supreme Court said you could do it in other states and make some money. I mean, the problems he raised are problems that existed since we've been gambling on sports in Las Vegas, and that has been, I don't know how many.
All right, Delegate Sickles, Delegate Ayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Sickles, I guess I would add to much of what has been said and state that I mean no harm to the bill, but I don't know perhaps if this is a question or a statement. You know, a lot of the debate that we have had around this legislation and other gaming legislation has come down to ensuring that the foundation as we move forward as a Commonwealth is really strong and that we get it right because of fear of unintended consequences. And so I would just say that I feel the very same about this legislation, that it's going to be really important that we get this right. And so I appreciate the commitment to work on this between now and full. But I also feel as though, based on what has been raised today, that it will be a massive undertaking to sort of address all of the concerns. That's a personal thought. I just want to weigh in and say that between now and full, I do also, based on the testimony, have concerns about this reference to the real-time data reporting and the use of the official league data. But more importantly, the 4 major elements that were raised as it pertains to the player protections, I think those are massive. And we haven't even begun to mention what those should look like in this legislation. And so I just want to say that I hope that you will try and add language to this legislation that speaks specifically to player protections.
Well,
because
you know how the process works as well as anybody. Let's give us some language.
I'm almost finished. I'm almost finished. And so I look forward to any way I can be helpful and just making sure that we do cover this, because it will be important to have this as this language as this bill moves forward as part of the foundation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. Is there any further questions for the patron?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion to report and refer this to appropriations. We have a second. All right, the clerk will open the roll. All right, we have 5, 1, and 1 abstention to report to appropriations. Thank you very much, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and bring all your suggestions in writing. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll come back in order. We have one last bill. We're just going to pass it by without objection. The patrons agreed to do that in the interest of getting us home. HB 1686, we're just going to pass it by. Thank you, Delegate Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you, committee.
We have a motion to adjourn. We're going to adjourn. Thank you very much. This committee is adjourned.